Most buildings are designed to be bright, flooded with light, every corner visible, every surface exposed. But when we think of darkness, we often think of fear, emptiness, or neglect. What if darkness wasn't just the absence of light? What if it was a tool, one that could shape how we feel, move, and connect with a space? Darkness can guide us, calm us, or even move us to awe. Let's explore how architects use shadow and dimness not as mistakes to fix, but as essential elements in creating spaces that truly come alive. For centuries, architecture has been dominated by light. Buildings have been designed to capture, reflect, and amplify it. Grand cathedrals rose with stained glass windows to let sunlight pour in, and modern skyscrapers gleam with glass facades. Light was seen as progress, clarity, and even purity. Darkness, by contrast, was treated as something to be banished. Dim spaces were viewed as unsafe, unfinished, or uncomfortable. Yet darkness has its own power. It is not just the absence of light. It can be shaped, framed, and used as a tool in design. When approached with intention, darkness becomes an active element that adds depth and meaning to a space. Imagine a concert. The silence between notes matters as much as the music itself. Without pauses, the sound would become noise. Darkness works the same way in architecture. It creates rhythm and balance. A dim hallway can heighten the experience of stepping into a bright room. A shadowed corner can make a simple beam of light feel sacred. Spaces that move between light and darkness guide the body and mind through a subtle journey. They slow people down. They invite reflection. By varying the intensity of light, designers can set a pace, like a composer shaping a song. Darkness also affects how people feel. When a room is evenly lit, the eye has no place to rest. Everything is visible at once, and the mind processes it quickly. In a darker room, vision narrows, edges blur, sounds seem louder, textures sharper, scents more noticeable. Darkness deepens other senses. A low-lit restaurant, for instance, often feels more intimate than a brightly lit one. In a home, a single lamp in a dark living room can create a sense of calm. These responses are not accidents. They come from how humans evolved, finding safety by firelight while the night remained mysterious. Architects can use that primal response to create spaces that are quiet, meditative, or dramatic. Time plays a role in how darkness shapes experience. Natural light changes throughout the day, and with it, the character of a space. Morning light may wash a room with softness, while evening light strikes at sharp angles, casting long shadows. A space designed with darkness in mind does not remain static. It transforms hour by hour. A windowless theater stays the same, whether it is noon or midnight. But a chapel with narrow openings shifts constantly. As the sun moves, darkness and light exchange places. This relationship reminds people of passing time. It makes them aware of cycles beyond their control. Tadao Ando's Church of the Light offers a clear example of darkness used with purpose. The building is simple: concrete walls, a wooden floor, and a single cross cut into the far wall. Light enters only through that cross. When you step inside, your eyes adjust slowly. The darkness surrounds you, heavy and still. Then the cross begins to glow, sharp and brilliant against the muted space. The effect is powerful, not because there is much light, but because there is so little of it. The darkness gives the light meaning. Without the surrounding shadow, the cross would not feel as profound. Ando understood that darkness could be as expressive as any material. Kahn often spoke of the dialogue between light and shadow. He believed that light defines form, but shadow gives it mystery. In his designs, darkness is not left over after light has been added. It is considered from the beginning. In one of his buildings, a library reading room may be bright while the stacks are kept dim. This contrast suggests that the books are waiting, quiet and hidden, until a reader brings them into the light. Kahn's approach shows how darkness can shape not only how a space looks, but how it is used and understood. Think of walking through a city at night. A brightly lit street feels open and public, while a narrow shadowed alley feels private, maybe even secretive. In both cases, the darkness defines the boundary. It tells you where you belong and where you might hesitate to go. Architects can use this instinct to guide movement without signs or barriers. A darkened corridor can slow footsteps before a grand hall. A shaded bench can suggest rest. Darkness, handled with care, can act like an invisible hand, steering behavior through subtle cues. Many modern buildings aim to eliminate shadows. They use uniform lighting, so every surface is evenly visible. This approach can make spaces efficient and predictable, but it also flattens experience. When everything is lit the same, nothing feels special. Introducing darkness restores contrast. It gives the eye places to linger and the mind moments to pause. Even a single shadow can create drama in an otherwise plain room. It does not take much, just a willingness to see darkness as a material, not a mistake. Consider how a museum might handle light. In a well-designed gallery, the art is lit, while the surrounding walls and floor fade into darkness. Visitors focus on what is illuminated, free from distraction. If the entire space were as bright as the paintings, the impact would lessen. Darkness, in this case, acts like a frame. It holds attention and heightens emotion. This principle applies far beyond museums. A kitchen, a lobby, a theater, all can benefit from using darkness as carefully as color or texture. Darkness does not demand elaborate technology or expensive materials. It requires restraint and intention. It asks the designer to leave some parts unseen. This can feel risky, especially in a culture that prizes openness and visibility. Yet when done with skill, it adds depth and meaning to everyday spaces. It reminds people that not everything must be revealed. Like silence in music, darkness gives shape to what surrounds it. It turns light into something more than brightness. It turns space into experience. From the earliest human shelters, darkness held power. Long before cities and electric light, people gathered in caves deep within the earth. These spaces were not only for survival, they became places of ritual and meaning. The darkness of a cave was more than shade. It was a threshold between the everyday world and the unknown. In these early settings, flickering firelight cast shifting shapes on rough walls. The limits of vision stirred imagination and belief. Darkness gave form to mystery. Ancient people did not fill these spaces with light. They embraced shadow to mark the sacred. As civilizations grew, the use of darkness became more deliberate. Egyptian tombs were built deep within stone, with narrow passages leading to hidden chambers. These tombs were not meant to be visited casually. They guided the living and the dead through a carefully planned journey. The outer areas received some light, but as one moved inward, the path grew darker. At the center, darkness was nearly complete, broken only by the small, controlled glow of oil lamps. This gradual shift from light to dark mirrored spiritual transformation. It suggested leaving behind the visible world and entering the realm of eternity. The tomb's darkness protected the dead, but it also shaped the living visitor's experience. It was architecture as ritual. Greek and Roman temples approached light and darkness differently, but still with intention. Greek temples often appeared open and balanced from the outside. Their columns and steps welcomed sunlight, creating a sense of harmony and order. Yet inside the cella, the inner room, was dim. Here, statues of God stood partly veiled by shadow. The mystery came not from concealment, but from contrast. A bright courtyard gave way to a cool, dark interior. Roman temples took this idea further, using engineering to control how light entered. They understood that a single beam of sunlight could transform a space. The Pantheon in Rome shows this mastery. Its vast dome rises above an open circular space, and at the top is an oculus, a round opening to the sky. This oculus is the only source of direct light. As the sun moves, the beam shifts, tracing a path across the walls and floor. The rest of the building remains in shadow. The effect changes hour by hour, day by day. Visitors stand in a space that feels alive because of this slow, constant motion. The darkness does not compete with the light. It frames it, making the single opening seem infinite. This play between shadow and sun was not accidental. It was a precise design meant to connect the earthly and the divine. During the Middle Ages, Gothic cathedrals reached upward toward heaven. Builders used height and light to inspire awe. But darkness remained an essential partner. Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris offers a clear example. Its tall, narrow windows are filled with stained glass. Sunlight passes through and turns into colored light, soft and subdued. Inside, the walls and ceilings stay in shadow. This creates a layered effect, patches of glowing color against a backdrop of darkness. The vertical lines of the architecture rise into dimness, suggesting infinite height. In this setting, darkness is not emptiness. It is a presence that makes the colored light feel sacred. Worshippers entering such a space experience both fear and wonder. The darkness speaks to the mystery of faith, while the light hints at divine grace. In these cathedrals, darkness also served practical purposes. Large, heavy stone structures needed thick walls and deep recesses. These structural choices created natural shadows. Instead of fighting this, builders used it to their advantage. The balance between dark and light became part of the spiritual message. Every candle, every shaft of sunlight had greater meaning because it emerged from a sea of shadow. Eastern traditions developed a different relationship with darkness. In Japan, for example, subtle shadow has long been valued. Traditional tea rooms are small and simple, built with natural materials like wood, paper, and clay. Light filters in softly through shoji screens. Corners remain dim, and surfaces reflect only a gentle glow. This approach celebrates imperfection and quietness. Junichiro Tanizaki, in his writing about Japanese aesthetics, described how this dimness allows people to notice the fine grain of wood or the texture of a handmade bowl. In a bright room, such details might be overlooked. In a darker room, they come forward slowly, inviting patience and attention. Imagine sitting in one of these tea rooms. Outside, the sun may be bright, but inside, the light is muted. Your eyes adjust and shapes emerge gradually. The shadows are not oppressive. They are soft, like a veil. This darkness creates intimacy. It slows the pace of conversation. It makes each gesture deliberate. In this setting, light is not the goal. It's a subtle accent, just enough to reveal what matters. This idea stands in contrast to Western traditions that often seek to banish shadow. Here, shadow is seen as part of beauty itself. Across cultures and centuries, darkness has been used to shape meaning. In some places, it protected sacred relics or heightened ritual. In others, it created drama or mystery. Even today, the lessons remain clear. Light gains power when it is rare, when it emerges from shadow. A beam of sun through an oculus, a faint glow behind paper walls, a fragment of color in a cathedral window. These moments stay with us because they are framed by darkness. Ancient builders knew this instinctively. Their structures remind us that architecture is not just about what we see, it's also about what we cannot fully see, the places where vision fades and imagination begins. Darkness affects how people feel in ways that are often subtle but deeply rooted. The body and mind respond to low light without conscious thought. When a room grows dim, voices lower, movements slow, and attention shifts inward. Darkness narrows what the eyes can see, which in turn sharpens other senses. The texture of a surface becomes more noticeable, a faint sound carries more weight, and even the rhythm of breathing seems louder. These changes alter mood and behavior. Architects and designers use this effect to create spaces that calm, focus, or stir emotion. Soft, diffused darkness can create intimacy. Think of a candlelit restaurant. The faces of people at each table glow, while the surrounding room fades into shadow. The effect makes the space feel private, even when it is crowded. Conversation becomes more personal because the darkness hides small distractions. The eye does not wander to every detail of the room. Instead, it settles on what is illuminated. This sense of closeness is not limited to dining. Traditional bathhouses often use dim light for the same reason. In a softly lit pool or steam room, people move quietly and speak less. The darkness encourages stillness and respect for others sharing the space. In both cases, the mood depends on careful balance. Too much darkness can feel unsafe. Too much light breaks the spell. Deep shadows work differently. They can inspire awe or even fear. In a vast, darkened space, people feel small. This reaction comes from ancient instincts. The unknown has always held danger, and darkness hides what cannot be seen. In certain settings, this fear becomes reverence. Imagine stepping into a large cathedral or temple where the ceiling disappears into shadow. The mind cannot measure the full height, so it imagines it to be endless. This uncertainty creates a feeling of wonder. The same effect appears in nature. Standing at the mouth of a cave or under a thick forest canopy, darkness stretches beyond reach. It makes the visible world feel fragile and temporary. Designers use this response to create moments of humility and reflection. By shaping where light falls and where it does not, they guide the emotions of those who enter. Darkness also affects the sense of safety. In bright spaces, everything is exposed. There is nowhere to hide, and behavior becomes guarded. Dim spaces invite vulnerability. When the light is low, people feel less observed. They may speak more openly or act with less restraint. This can foster connection, but it also requires care. A bar lit only by candles feels romantic to some, but threatening to others. The difference lies in design. Small, enclosed areas with warm light feel protective. Large, undefined dark spaces may feel unsafe. Architects consider these boundaries carefully. A single step into shadow can change how a person experiences a room. In Peter Zumthor's Thermavals, darkness is used to encourage mindfulness. The spa is built from layers of stone, with narrow openings that let in filtered light. As visitors move through the baths, the lighting shifts. Some pools glow faintly, while others are almost completely dark. The darkness slows movement. People tread carefully, paying attention to each step. This awareness deepens the experience of touch and sound. The water feels smoother, the echo of a drip more profound. By removing visual noise, the design creates a meditative state. Visitors focus not on what they see, but on what they feel. This is not accidental. Zumthor planned the relationship between light and shadow so that the architecture itself teaches stillness. Darkness can also mark transitions. Moving from a bright hallway into a dim chamber signals a change in purpose. It tells the body to shift pace. This is why many religious and cultural spaces use darkness as thresholds. A darkened entryway prepares visitors for what lies beyond. It clears the mind, like a deep breath before speaking. In daily life, similar effects can be seen in small ways. A home with a softly lit corner invites reading or quiet thought. A theater darkens before a performance to focus attention. These shifts work because the human mind responds immediately to light levels. No words are needed. Darkness speaks directly to the senses. The power of darkness lies in contrast. A room that is always bright leaves little room for imagination. Everything is visible and fixed. In darkness, the unknown enters. The edges of objects blur, and the mind fills in what it cannot see. This creates depth, both physically and emotionally. In a dim space, a single point of light gains meaning. A candle on a table, a ray of sun through a small window. These moments feel significant because they stand out. Without surrounding shadow, they would go unnoticed. Designers use this principle to create focus. They do not need to light everything. They only need to light what matters. Consider a simple scenario. You walk into a small restaurant where the only light comes from lanterns on each table. The walls are barely visible. The air smells of food and wood smoke. The darkness makes each table feel like its own world. The sound of nearby conversations blends into a soft hum. Your attention stays on the people you are with. Now imagine the same room fully lit with overhead lights. The food and company are unchanged, but the mood is completely different. The intimacy is lost. This contrast shows how darkness can shape experience more than any physical feature of the space. In many cultures, darkness is linked to rest and renewal. Night signals the end of activity and the start of reflection. Dim environments tap into this rhythm. They slow the body's pace and quiet the mind. This is why spas, meditation rooms, and places of worship often use low light. The darkness helps people let go of daily tension. It creates a pause in the constant flow of information and tasks. Even a brief stay in such a space can feel restorative. This effect does not require words or instruction. It happens naturally as the senses adjust. Deep, controlled darkness can also foster imagination. In a theater, before a play begins, the audience sits in near total dark. This shared experience creates anticipation. When the lights rise, the story feels more vivid because it emerges from shadow. The same idea applies to architecture. A windowless room with a single opening can turn the changing light of day into a performance. Each shift carries meaning because it is framed by darkness. By limiting what is seen, designers expand what is felt. Darkness shapes emotion through what it reveals and what it withholds. It can soothe or unsettle, connect or isolate. It can turn a simple space into a place of memory. When handled with care, darkness is not just an absence of light. It becomes a tool for shaping human experience, guiding movement, and deepening the way people relate to the spaces they inhabit. Darkness has the power to change how people perceive space. What we see is never just physical form. It is shaped by how light reaches our eyes and what remains hidden. In low light, walls blur, corners fade, and distances become uncertain. The mind fills in what it cannot fully see. This creates illusions that can make a space feel larger, smaller, deeper, or more enclosed than it really is. Designers use these effects to shape movement and emotion without altering the actual dimensions of a room. In a dark space, boundaries are less clear. A ceiling lit evenly across its surface shows its true height, but when the edges are in shadow, the height becomes ambiguous. A low ceiling can seem higher if light is concentrated on a central area, while the perimeter stays dim. The reverse is also true. A tall space can feel compressed when the upper reaches disappear into darkness. This shift affects how people move. In a low, dim corridor, they may hunch slightly or walk slower, sensing the ceiling close above them. In a tall, shadowed hall, they might look upward, unsure where the space ends. These reactions are physical and immediate. They happen before thought. Corridors and passageways reveal how darkness changes distance. A brightly lit hallway shows its full length at a glance. You can see the far end, judge how long it will take to reach it, and move with confidence. When that same corridor is dimly lit, its depth becomes uncertain. The far end might appear farther away than it is, stretching the perceived distance. Each step feels more deliberate. Museums often use this effect to guide exploration. A gallery might open onto a narrow, shadowed passage. Visitors cannot see exactly where it leads, so they move forward with curiosity. The darkness hides the destination, turning a simple transition into a moment of discovery. By revealing only part of a space, designers create a sense of journey. Mystery comes from partial concealment. When everything is visible at once, there is nothing left to imagine. Darkness allows for layers of experience. A room may contain alcoves or recesses that are not immediately obvious. A doorway half in shadow suggests something beyond without giving it away. This engages the mind. People feel drawn to uncover what lies in darkness. The act of revealing becomes part of the design. Even a single element, like a staircase emerging from shadow into light, can create a story. The viewer becomes a participant, completing the scene through movement and attention. Consider a museum designed with hidden corridors. The main gallery may be well lit, showcasing the art clearly, but along one edge, a narrow, darkened passage beckons. At first glance, it seems like a service hall or private area. Only by entering does the visitor discover another exhibit. This moment of transition heightens the impact of what is revealed. The darkness made the discovery possible. Without it, the space would feel static, like a map fully unfolded. Museums around the world use this strategy to encourage slow exploration. Darkness does not just hide, it shapes behavior. Louis Kahn's Salk Institute in California shows another approach. The complex consists of two long buildings facing each other across a central courtyard. During the day, sunlight pours into the open space, reflecting off pale stone surfaces, but the buildings themselves create deep, shadowed edges. As you walk from the bright center toward the darker sides, your perception shifts. The open courtyard seems even more expansive because of the framing shadows. The contrast between intense light and deep shade makes the space feel larger than its actual size. Kahn understood that shadow defines light. By holding some areas back in darkness, he gave clarity and power to the parts that shine. Darkness can also alter a sense of orientation. In uniform brightness, the eye takes in all surfaces equally, depth and distance are clear. In darkness, visual cues are fewer. A room with one lit wall and three shadowed ones feels asymmetrical, even if its shape is regular. The lit area becomes an anchor point, and the rest recedes. This can be used to guide movement. A person will naturally move toward the brightest spot, like walking toward a window at night. Architects can place exits, entrances, or focal points at these lit destinations, using darkness to lead without signage or barriers. The result is subtle, but powerful. People follow light as they might follow a path. This same principle works on a smaller scale. Imagine a living room with one lamp placed beside a reading chair. The rest of the room is left in partial shadow. The light creates a pocket of focus. Even in a large space, attention narrows to that single point. The room feels intimate, as if it has shrunk to fit the circle of light. By adjusting the balance between brightness and darkness, the perception of size can expand or contract. Designers do not need to move walls or change dimensions. They only need to shape what is visible. Discovery depends on withholding. A garden, for example, might reveal itself slowly through layers of light and shadow. At night, paths can be lit in segments, with dark stretches in between. Each pool of light offers a glimpse, while the surrounding darkness suggests more to come. The visitor moves forward, motivated by curiosity. This rhythm mirrors natural exploration. Humans are wired to seek out what is hidden. Darkness plays to that instinct, turning simple movement into adventure. It also allows for surprise. When the final view appears fully lit, after a sequence of dim spaces, the effect is dramatic. The journey matters as much as the destination. The interplay of darkness and light creates illusions that enrich experience. A narrow hallway can feel endless if its end fades into shadow. A small courtyard can seem vast when framed by darkened walls. Even a modest window can appear monumental when it is the only source of illumination in a room. These effects rely on the mind's tendency to complete what it cannot see. Darkness withholds information, and the imagination fills the gap. Designers who understand this can craft spaces that feel alive, shifting as one moves through them. In everyday life, these illusions appear without conscious design. Walking at dusk, a familiar street may seem different. Distances stretch, shapes distort, and details vanish. A tree becomes a silhouette, a doorway a black rectangle. The world feels altered, though nothing has physically changed. Architecture can harness this same effect intentionally. By controlling light levels, it can play with perception, creating spaces that surprise and engage. Darkness is not just an absence. It is an active force that shapes what we believe we see. Through shadow, spaces can grow or shrink, open or close, reveal or conceal. When used with care, darkness turns static structures into dynamic experiences. It invites people to look closer, move slower, and wonder what lies beyond the edge of sight. Shadows are often seen as byproducts of light, something that happens when objects block its path. In architecture, shadows can be more than that. They can act as tools, carefully shaped and placed to give meaning to a space. Light reveals form, but shadow gives it depth and character. A wall washed in uniform light looks flat. When part of that wall falls into shadow, it gains texture and presence. Shadows bring buildings to life. They shift through the day, responding to the sun, weather, and season. They turn static structures into living compositions. Not all shadows are alike. Some are soft and diffuse. These occur when light is scattered, as on a cloudy day, or when it passes through a thin material like paper or fabric. Soft shadows blur edges and smooth surfaces. They create a calm atmosphere, like the interior of a traditional Japanese tea room where light filters through shoji screens. These shadows soften the hard lines of architecture, making spaces feel warm and inviting. Other shadows are sharp and geometric. These happen when light is direct and unobstructed. The edge between light and dark is crisp, almost like a drawn line. Sharp shadows bring drama and clarity. They highlight structure, reveal pattern, and call attention to detail. A single beam of sunlight cutting across a dark floor can transform a simple room into something extraordinary. Designers can control shadows with precision. One way is through screens and lattices. These elements filter light, breaking it into smaller pieces before it reaches a surface. The result is a shifting pattern of light and shadow. As the sun moves, the pattern changes, adding a sense of time to the space. A perforated facade can cast thousands of tiny points of light that ripple across walls and floors. Narrow apertures work differently. They allow only thin slices of light to enter, creating concentrated bands of shadow. The narrower the opening, the sharper and more focused the effect. By adjusting the size, shape, and position of these openings, architects can shape the mood of a space as carefully as a sculptor shapes clay. Carlo Scarpa understood the sculptural quality of shadows. In his renovation of the Museo di Castelvecchio in Verona, he paid close attention to how light entered and moved through the building. Scarpa used deep recesses, layered walls, and carefully placed openings to create dramatic contrasts. A visitor walking through the museum experiences a sequence of light and shadow that frames the artwork and the architecture itself. In some rooms, soft light washes over rough stone, emphasizing its texture. In others, narrow beams of sunlight slice across smooth plaster, highlighting edges and corners. Scarpa treated shadows as part of the design, not as an afterthought. They guide the eye, reveal materials, and shape how people move through the museum. Luis Barragan approached shadows differently, blending them with vivid color. In Casa Galardi, a house in Mexico City, Barragan used bold surfaces painted in intense hues, pink, blue, yellow, set against areas of deep shadow. The darkness makes the colors appear even more vibrant. Sunlight enters through precise openings, casting sharp lines that move across the walls. These shifting shadows animate the colors, creating a constantly changing composition. In one famous room, a pool of water reflects both light and shadow onto the surrounding surfaces. The effect is both playful and meditative. Barragan's work shows how shadow can heighten emotional response. The dark areas do not mute the color, they make it sing. Shadows also create texture. A flat wall can appear rich and varied when light strikes it at an angle, throwing small ridges and imperfections into relief. Materials like brick, stone, or wood gain depth through this interplay. Even smooth concrete takes on character when parts of it are in shadow. This effect can be deliberate. A facade with deep grooves or overhangs invites light to interact with it, producing complex patterns. As the sun moves, these patterns change, giving the building a sense of movement. Architects can design these surfaces with the same care given to a sculpture or painting. The shadow becomes an invisible material, shaping what the eye perceives. In urban spaces, shadows help define scale. A plaza in full sun can feel exposed and overwhelming. Adding shaded areas breaks up the space, creating zones of comfort. A tree casting dappled shadow over a bench offers relief on a hot day. A canopy or arcade provides shelter and rhythm. These shadows are not static. They shift as people move through them, creating a dynamic relationship between body and space. Designers think about how these shadows will behave at different times of day and in different seasons. A well-placed shadow can cool a space in summer while allowing light to penetrate in winter. Shadows can also conceal. A stairwell lit only from above may reveal each step clearly while keeping the surrounding walls in darkness. This focuses attention on the act of climbing. In a gallery, an object lit from one side may seem to emerge from the shadows, giving it presence and mystery. By controlling what remains hidden, architects create narrative. A visitor experiences the building in sequence, each shadowed reveal adding to the story. This technique is common in religious spaces, where light and shadow symbolize spiritual ideas. A darkened entryway leading to a bright sanctuary, for instance, can suggest a journey from the unknown to the known, from the earthly to the divine. Consider the simple act of walking past a lattice screen. As you move, the pattern of light and shadow shifts across your body and the surrounding surfaces. The architecture responds to you, making you aware of your own movement. This interaction turns an ordinary walk into an experience. The shadow is not passive. It engages, reflects, and transforms. Even temporary shadows, like those cast by passing clouds, become part of this dialogue. Good design anticipates these moments, leaving space for the natural world to participate. In residential settings, shadows create intimacy. A bedroom with a single window facing east will fill with sharp morning light, then gradually darken as the day progresses. The shifting shadows mark the passage of time. In the evening, a single lamp can carve out a small pool of light, making the room feel safe and enclosed. This cycle connects the inhabitant to natural rhythms. The shadow acts as a gentle reminder of change. Architects who understand this can design homes that feel alive rather than static. Shadows are always present, but they gain meaning through attention. When treated as active elements, they become as important as walls or floors. They shape how materials are read, how spaces are navigated, and how emotions are stirred. By using tools like screens, perforated panels, and carefully sized openings, designers can sculpt shadows with precision. They can make them soft or sharp, subtle or dramatic. In this way, shadows become a language. They speak of depth, texture, and time. They turn the play of light into a deliberate act of design. Darkness does not exist on its own. It interacts with the surfaces it touches. The same amount of light will behave differently depending on the material it strikes. Some materials reflect, scattering light and brightening a space. Others absorb, holding light and deepening shadows. This relationship between darkness and materiality defines the atmosphere of a room. It determines whether a space feels sharp or soft, expansive or intimate, quiet or active. Architects who understand this relationship can shape experience without adding extra decoration. They let materials speak through how they respond to darkness. Reflective materials amplify light. A polished stone floor will catch a faint glow and spread it across the room. A metal surface will reflect movement and flicker, bringing energy to an otherwise still environment. Even water can act as a mirror, doubling the effect of a single candle or a narrow window. These materials work best where light is scarce. In a dim space, they extend what little illumination exists, making it feel more precious. The reflection does not only add brightness, it also adds complexity. Layers of light appear on different planes, creating depth. This can make a small space feel larger and more dynamic. Matte materials behave differently. They absorb light instead of bouncing it back. Rough stone, unfinished wood, and raw concrete all take in illumination and hold it close to their surfaces. In darkness, these materials reveal their true character. A textured wall may appear flat in bright light, but in dim conditions, every groove and grain becomes visible through subtle shadow. This quality invites touch. The hand seeks to confirm what the eye only partly perceives. Darkness turns seeing into a physical act. It encourages slower movement, closer attention. A corridor lined with matte stone will feel weighty and grounded. The same corridor in polished marble would feel sleek and open. The dimensions might be identical, but the mood would be entirely different. Peter Zumthor's Columba Museum in Cologne shows how darkness and materiality can work together to create a rich, quiet atmosphere. The building is made of pale gray bricks, each one slightly irregular. The windows are narrow and placed high, letting in a soft, diffused light. As this light falls across the textured walls, it produces delicate shadows. The effect is not dramatic. There are no sharp beams or harsh contrasts. Instead, the space feels layered and calm. Visitors notice the slight variations in each brick, the subtle change in color as light moves through the day. The darkness in the Columba Museum does not hide the materials. It reveals them by slowing perception. The building invites people to linger, to pay attention to what is close at hand. Darkness can also heighten the honesty of materials. In bright light, surfaces compete for attention. Paint, fabric, and ornament all stand out equally. In dimness, distractions fall away. The essential qualities of a material come forward. A wooden beam shows its grain. A stone wall shows the marks of its cutting. A concrete column shows the texture of its formwork. These details may seem small, but they give a building its character. Darkness makes them visible, not through exposure, but through emphasis. It allows a single line or texture to carry weight. This is why many minimalist spaces rely on controlled light and shadow. By reducing what is seen, they deepen what is felt. Traditional Japanese architecture demonstrates this principle with quiet mastery. Houses and tea rooms are built from natural materials like wood, paper, and clay. Light enters through shoji screens, which scatter it gently. The result is a soft, even glow. Corners and edges remain in shadow. In this setting, the textures of the materials become central. The roughness of tatami mats underfoot, the smoothness of a lacquered bowl, the grain of aged wood, all are enhanced by the dim light. Junichiro Tanizaki wrote about this quality, describing how a single beam of light might fall across a wooden beam, making its imperfections beautiful. In such spaces, darkness is not seen as lack. It is the medium through which beauty is revealed. The relationship between light and dark materials also affects how space is perceived. A room lined with dark wood will absorb most of the light, creating a sense of enclosure. The darkness emphasizes the material's depth and richness. A room with white plaster walls will reflect light evenly, making it feel open and airy. Designers can combine these effects for balance. A bright ceiling paired with dark flooring can make a space feel taller. A reflective surface set against a matte one can create visual tension. The interplay of reflection and absorption becomes a tool for shaping how the body experiences the room. Imagine walking through a hallway with rough stone on one side and smooth glass on the other. In dim light, the stone side seems to retreat into shadow, while the glass side captures every glimmer. The contrast heightens awareness. Your hand might brush the stone to feel its solidity, then hover near the glass to avoid leaving a mark. Darkness guides these instincts. It draws attention to qualities that bright, uniform lighting would flatten. The experience becomes richer because the materials speak differently in low light. Even temperature plays a role. Materials respond to touch as well as sight. In a dim room, the coolness of concrete or the warmth of wood becomes more noticeable. Darkness sharpens these sensations. Without visual overload, the body picks up on subtle cues. A bench of cold stone in a shaded corner might feel austere and meditative. A wooden chair in a pool of light might feel inviting and familiar. These reactions are immediate and physical. They connect people to the built environment in a direct way. Water is another material that transforms in darkness. A still pool can seem endless when its surface reflects a dim ceiling. Ripples catch the light, creating movement and sound. In some traditional bathhouses, small openings admit shafts of sunlight that play across the water. The surrounding darkness deepens the sense of mystery. The boundary between water and air blurs. Visitors move more slowly, guided by reflections and echoes rather than clear lines. In this way, darkness makes the material more than functional. It turns it into an experience. Zumthor often speaks about materials as if they hold memory. In the Columba Museum, he used bricks that carry the history of the site, some taken from older ruins. The soft shadows in the building seem to respect that history. They do not overwhelm it. Instead, they let the past and present coexist quietly. This approach shows how darkness can support storytelling. It does not need to be literal or dramatic. A simple wall lit in a certain way can evoke centuries of human presence. When materials and darkness work together, they shape atmosphere more effectively than any added ornament. A room can feel sacred, intimate, or monumental without changing its size or form. It is the surface underfoot, the wall beside the hand, the ceiling overhead, all responding to light in different ways. Darkness draws out these responses, asking the viewer to notice them. It turns ordinary elements like wood, stone, and concrete into carriers of meaning. Through shadow, materials reveal not only their physical properties, but also their emotional weight. When the sun sets, cities do not go dark. Artificial light steps in to shape streets, buildings, and public spaces. The transition from day to night changes how people experience the built environment. During the day, natural light defines form and texture. At night, electric light creates a new layer of meaning. What was open and visible can become focused and mysterious. A plaza filled with activity in daylight may turn into a quiet stage lit by a few lamps. This shift is not just functional. It is a transformation of atmosphere, one that depends on the balance between light and darkness. Artificial lighting can guide this transition in many ways. Some spaces aim to mimic natural cycles, using warm, low light to ease the shift from day to night. Others embrace contrast, replacing fading daylight with bold, precise beams. Streetlights, storefronts, and signs all contribute to the city's nighttime character. The placement and tone of this light affect how people move and feel. A well-lit path signals safety. A dim side street suggests privacy or risk. These cues are immediate and powerful. They shape behavior as much as the physical layout of the city. Jean Nouvel's Institute of the Arab World in Paris shows how architecture can respond directly to changing light. The building's south facade is covered with a grid of mechanical apertures inspired by traditional mashrabiyah screens. During the day, these apertures open and close to control sunlight entering the interior. As daylight fades, the facade becomes a glowing surface, illuminated from within. The transition is seamless. The building appears solid by day and radiant by night. This dynamic quality reflects the rhythms of the city and the natural world. It also shows how artificial light can extend a building's life beyond sunset, creating a dialogue between interior and exterior. At night, light does more than make things visible. It creates narratives. A single spotlight on a statue turns it into a focal point. A row of glowing windows suggests life inside a building. In an urban square, lighting can define zones of activity and rest. Designers use this to shape how people move through space. Darkness plays an equal role. A dark background makes a lit object stand out. A pool of light feels more intense when surrounded by shadow. The contrast between lit and unlit areas adds drama. It tells stories without words. Consider a busy street at night. Storefronts compete for attention with bright signs and displays. Above them, apartment windows glow faintly. The sidewalks are washed in a steady, neutral light from overhead lamps. Each layer of light has a purpose. The bright signs draw shoppers. The steady streetlights provide safety. The softer windows hint at private lives above. Together, they form a complex composition. If one layer were missing, the balance would shift. Too much brightness would overwhelm. Too little would leave the street feeling empty. Good lighting design considers these relationships carefully. Artificial light can also transform architecture into sculpture. Stephen Hall's addition to the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City is a clear example. During the day, the glass pavilions appear as solid, opaque forms set in the landscape. At night, they glow from within, turning into luminous volumes. The surrounding grounds remain mostly dark. Visitors walking toward the museum see the glowing structures floating in shadow, like lanterns in a field. This effect changes the experience of the building completely. It draws people in, emphasizing the connection between art and light. The darkness around the pavilions is essential. Without it, the glow would lose its impact. In some cases, designers use artificial light to evoke natural phenomena. Olafur Eliasson's installation, The Weather Project, created a vast, immersive environment inside the Tate Modern's Turbine Hall. The space was filled with mist and lit by a giant glowing disk that resembled the sun. The rest of the hall was left in deep shadow. Visitors lay on the floor, gazing up at the artificial sky. The experience felt both real and unreal. By controlling every aspect of light and darkness, Eliasson made people aware of how they respond to natural cycles. This kind of work shows the emotional power of artificial lighting when it goes beyond function. The nighttime city depends on layers of light, but also on restraint. Too much uniform brightness flattens experience. When every surface is equally lit, nothing stands out. There is no mystery, no sense of depth. Contrast creates rhythm. A darkened alley leading to a lit plaza builds anticipation. A dim cafe glowing from within feels inviting because the street outside is darker. These effects work because the human eye is drawn to differences. Darkness is not an enemy of light, it is its partner. Without surrounding shadow, artificial light loses meaning. This balance extends to individual rooms as well. A living room lit by a single lamp creates a zone of intimacy. The rest of the room fades into soft shadow, making the lit area feel like a small world. In public spaces, the same principle applies on a larger scale. A park with scattered lamps encourages wandering. A theater lobby with focused spotlights on specific features directs attention where it is needed. In both cases, the design relies on controlling where light falls and where darkness remains. Artificial lighting also interacts with materials differently than daylight. At night, reflective surfaces like glass and metal become more prominent. A window lit from inside becomes a glowing rectangle. A wet street reflects neon signs, doubling their presence. Designers can use these effects to add complexity. A simple wall may appear layered when light bounces across it at sharp angles. These reflections create movement and depth, even when the physical structure is static. Technology has expanded the possibilities for lighting design. LEDs can change color and intensity with precision. Sensors can adjust brightness based on time of day or the presence of people. These tools allow for subtle shifts that mimic natural cycles. A building's facade might warm in tone at dusk, then cool as night deepens. This approach connects artificial light to the rhythms of the sky, easing the transition between day and night. It also reduces the harshness that can come from static, unchanging illumination. Despite these advancements, the most powerful effects often come from simplicity. A single, well-placed light can transform a space more than a complex system. A dark street, punctuated by a few glowing windows, tells a stronger story than one lit evenly from end to end. The key lies in understanding how people move, look, and feel after dark. Light should support those patterns, not overwhelm them. As cities grow and technology advances, the dialogue between light and darkness remains central. Artificial light gives buildings and streets a second life after sunset. It creates safety, orientation, and beauty. But it is the contrast with darkness that makes these qualities meaningful. The night is not a blank canvas to be filled with light. It is a partner in design, shaping the way people experience the world after the sun has gone. The way people think about darkness is shaped by where they live and how they understand the world. Light and shadow are not just physical conditions. They carry cultural meaning built over centuries. In some places, darkness is linked to fear and danger. In others, it is seen as peaceful and necessary. These views influence how buildings are designed and how people experience them. Architecture becomes a mirror of both climate and belief. In much of Western tradition, darkness has long been seen as something to overcome. Light represents safety, clarity, and progress. Darkness suggests the unknown. This association can be traced back to ancient myths and religious stories where light stands for truth and darkness for chaos. Over time, this shaped how cities were built. Streets were lit to fight crime, windows were widened to let in more sun, and interiors were designed to be bright and open. The goal was to remove shadow and make everything visible. Even today, Western design often equates well-lit spaces with health and cleanliness. Darkness, when it appears, is usually controlled and framed as dramatic contrast rather than a natural condition. Eastern traditions developed a different relationship with darkness. In Japan, for example, shadow is valued as part of beauty. Dim interiors are not seen as incomplete, but as balanced. This view comes from both spiritual beliefs and practical needs. In traditional Japanese tea rooms, the light is soft and filtered. Darkness settles in the corners, allowing the eye to focus on small details, like the grain of wood or the surface of a ceramic bowl. Junichiro Tanizaki wrote about this in his book In Praise of Shadows, describing how subtle shadow creates depth and calm. In this tradition, darkness is not a threat. It is a form of harmony, a space for reflection. This understanding shapes everything from the layout of homes to the placement of gardens and courtyards. Climate also plays a powerful role. In hot, sunny regions, darkness is used as a practical tool. Thick walls and narrow windows create interiors that stay cool by limiting direct sunlight. The darkness inside these buildings is not accidental. It provides relief from the harshness outside. Traditional desert architecture shows this clearly. In many Middle Eastern and North African cities, streets are narrow and winding, with high walls that cast deep shadows. The shade cools the air and slows the pace of movement. Courtyards are often shaded by overhangs or fabric screens. These features make outdoor spaces comfortable, even in extreme heat. The design grows directly from the environment. Darkness becomes a form of shelter. Inside desert houses, the contrast between the bright, sunlit world outside and the cool, shadowed rooms inside is striking. Stepping across the threshold feels like entering another realm. The eye adjusts and the body relaxes. The darkness signals safety and rest. This experience is both physical and emotional. It is not only about temperature, but about rhythm. The play of light and shadow organizes the day, guiding when people work, rest, and gather. In this context, darkness is life-giving. Without it, the environment would be unbearable. In northern climates, where winter brings long periods of darkness, the relationship is reversed. Here, light is scarce and precious. Buildings are designed to capture every bit of daylight. Large windows and reflective interiors help extend the brief hours of sun. At the same time, people embrace darkness as part of seasonal life. In Scandinavian countries, for example, the concept of hygge, a feeling of coziness and comfort, depends on low light. Candles, fireplaces, and soft lamps create warmth during the long, dark winter nights. The darkness outside makes the interior glow feel even more inviting. It encourages closeness and calm. Scandinavian cabin design shows how this balance works. Cabins are often simple wooden structures surrounded by forest or snow. During the day, they fill with natural light. At night, small pools of warm light from lamps and fires create intimate zones. The rest of the space remains in shadow. This design does not try to fight the darkness. Instead, it uses it to heighten the sense of refuge. The darkness outside frames the light inside, making it seem precious. In this setting, shadow is not empty space. It is part of the emotional experience of home. The difference between these two climate-driven approaches is clear. In hot regions, darkness protects by blocking heat. In cold regions, darkness defines comfort by surrounding light. Both responses are practical, but they also shape culture. In desert cities, narrow shaded alleys become places of social life. People gather there because the shadow makes them livable. In northern towns, glowing windows in the night become symbols of community. The environment sets the stage, and human behavior follows. These patterns can be seen in everyday life. Imagine walking through a desert town at midday. The sun blazes overhead, but the streets are cool and dim. You move through shadow almost the entire time, emerging briefly into light before ducking into the next shaded passage. The buildings rise close together, their walls thick and solid. The darkness feels protective, like an embrace. Now imagine a walk through a Nordic village on a winter evening. The sky is black by mid-afternoon. Snow reflects faint light from the moon. Houses glow softly from within, each window a small beacon. The darkness outside makes the warmth of those interiors feel even stronger. The two scenes could not be more different, yet both are shaped by the relationship between darkness and survival. Cultural meaning grows from these experiences. In places where darkness is a shield against heat, it may be associated with rest and privacy. In places where darkness is a constant presence, light takes on symbolic weight. Festivals of light are common in northern regions, marking the return of the sun. These traditions influence how architecture is imagined. A cathedral in Europe might soar upward to capture daylight through stained glass. A desert mosque might focus inward, its cool, shadowed courtyards providing relief from the sun. Both buildings express spiritual ideas, but they also respond to environmental needs. Modern design continues to reflect these deep connections. Contemporary architects draw on local traditions when choosing how to balance light and darkness. A house in the Middle East may use screens and lattices to create intricate patterns of shadow. A home in Scandinavia may rely on large glass walls to bring in low winter light. These choices are not purely aesthetic. They are responses to centuries of lived experience. They show how architecture carries memory. The meanings of darkness and light are never fixed. As cities grow and climates shift, these relationships evolve, yet the roots remain. Whether it is a shaded desert courtyard or a candlelit Nordic cabin, the way people build reflects how they understand their environment. Darkness is not simply the absence of light. It is a cultural language shaped by history, climate, and daily life. Designing with darkness is complex because it touches both emotion and practicality. Darkness creates mystery and depth, but it can also cause fear or discomfort. Many people associate dark spaces with danger or neglect. This reaction is deeply rooted in human instinct. In the past, darkness often meant vulnerability to unseen threats. Even in modern cities, these feelings remain. A shadowed alley or unlit stairwell can make someone uneasy, no matter how well designed the space may be. Architects must consider these responses carefully. They have to create environments that use darkness as a tool while avoiding spaces that feel unsafe. One of the main challenges is overcoming public fear of darkness. In many cultures, bright lighting equals control and safety. Streets are flooded with light to prevent crime. Stores use high levels of illumination to signal cleanliness and activity. When a designer chooses to work with dim light, they are going against these expectations. This choice can meet resistance. A museum gallery, lit with only soft, low light, might make some visitors uncomfortable, even if the design is intentional. They may worry they will miss important details or feel disoriented. Overcoming these reactions requires clear communication through design. The space itself must show that it is cared for and intentional. Clean finishes. Clear pathways and subtle lighting cues can signal safety without breaking the atmosphere. Accessibility is another practical issue. Darkness affects how people navigate a space. In dim environments, stairs, thresholds, and uneven surfaces can become hazards. Designers must balance mood with visibility. One approach is to use focused lighting. Instead of brightening an entire room, small lights can highlight edges and key points. This keeps the overall space dark while ensuring safety. Museums use this technique often. Artworks are illuminated so visitors can see them clearly, while the surrounding areas remain in shadow. Floor lighting or low-level fixtures guide movement without drawing attention. This creates a controlled experience that feels deliberate rather than neglected. Urban parks face a similar challenge. At night, they must be safe and welcoming, but too much uniform lighting can make them harsh and uninviting. Designers address this by layering light. Main paths are lit clearly for orientation. Secondary areas are kept dimmer, allowing for a sense of intimacy. Strategic placement of fixtures prevents dark corners where people might feel vulnerable. The goal is to create a gradient rather than a single level of brightness. This balance encourages both activity and reflection. A well-designed nighttime park feels alive without losing the calm that darkness provides. Maintenance adds another layer of complexity. Dark spaces depend on precise lighting. A single burned-out bulb can ruin the effect or create a safety issue. Fixtures must be chosen for durability and easy access. In museums, where lighting is critical, teams often plan detailed schedules for checking and replacing bulbs. They also consider how changing light sources over time might alter the appearance of exhibits. LED technology has improved consistency, but even LEDs need careful calibration. Designers must think beyond initial installation. A beautiful shadow pattern is meaningless if it cannot be maintained year after year. Cost is linked to maintenance. Complex lighting systems with moving parts or custom fixtures can be expensive to install and operate. Museums and public spaces often work within strict budgets. This forces tough decisions. A design that relies on intricate shadow play may need to be simplified to remain practical. In these cases, designers look for low-tech solutions. Natural light can be shaped with architectural elements like screens, overhangs, and recesses. These features require no electricity and minimal upkeep. During the day, they create dynamic patterns of shadow. At night, simple, well-placed fixtures can take over, reducing energy use and long-term expense. The relationship between function and atmosphere is constant. Darkness can enhance a space emotionally, but it must still meet everyday needs. A restaurant with dim lighting may feel intimate, but servers must be able to see well enough to work. A theater lobby can have dramatic pools of light, but emergency exits must be clear. The key is to separate functional lighting from atmospheric lighting. Task areas receive focused brightness, while surrounding spaces remain soft and shaded. This approach allows for both usability and mood. It requires careful planning so that the two systems do not conflict. Museums offer strong examples of this balance. Artworks need precise illumination to reveal color and detail. Too much light can damage sensitive pieces, while too little makes them hard to appreciate. Many museums use a combination of natural and artificial light. Skylights bring in daylight, which is filtered through louvers or screens. At night, adjustable spotlights take over. The surrounding walls and ceilings are kept darker to draw attention to the art. This strategy creates a quiet, contemplative environment while protecting the collection. Visitors move through a series of contrasts. Guided by light, but surrounded by shadow. Urban design brings its own set of challenges. A city must remain functional around the clock. Roads, transit hubs, and public plazas need to be safe and navigable at night. At the same time, these spaces should not lose character when the sun sets. Designers experiment with different lighting levels to shape nighttime identity. In some cities, historic districts use warm, low lighting to emphasize texture and detail. Modern areas might use cooler, brighter tones to highlight contemporary forms. The contrast between these zones creates a nighttime narrative. But as the balance is wrong, the result can feel chaotic or disjointed. Consistency matters as much as creativity. Public perception plays a role here as well. People must trust that dark spaces are intentional and safe. Graffiti, litter, or broken fixtures quickly undermine that trust. Regular maintenance is as important as initial design. A single neglected element can change the entire mood of a space. This is why lighting plans often include monitoring systems and staff training. Designers and managers work together to keep the experience consistent. Darkness can be powerful, but only when it is carefully managed. Designing with darkness also means understanding psychological limits. Total darkness can overwhelm. It removes orientation and triggers anxiety. Even spaces meant to be meditative need points of reference. A faint glow along a wall, a single lit doorway, or a view to the outside can provide comfort. These anchors help people relax rather than panic. The same principle applies in large outdoor areas. A completely dark park would feel unsafe, but small, consistent light sources can make it usable without destroying its nighttime character. Designers test these thresholds through mock-ups and user studies. The goal is to find the point where darkness is intriguing, not threatening. The challenges of working with darkness are practical, emotional, and cultural. They involve safety codes, budgets, and maintenance schedules, but also instinctive human reactions. A successful design acknowledges both. It does not treat darkness as a simple aesthetic choice. It treats it as a living element, one that must be nurtured and controlled. When done well, this balance creates spaces that are both functional and profound, places where light and shadow work together to shape experience. Light and darkness depend on each other. One cannot be understood without the other. A room filled with uniform brightness loses depth and meaning. A space covered in shadow feels incomplete and heavy. Architecture comes alive when these forces are balanced. The goal is not to favor one over the other, but to create a relationship where both have presence. This balance shapes how people move, feel, and understand the places they inhabit. When a design brings light and darkness into harmony, it creates spaces that are not only functional but deeply human. Transitions are essential to this harmony. Moving from brightness to shadow should not feel abrupt. The eye needs time to adjust, and the mind needs cues to follow. Gradual shifts can guide this process. A hallway may start with soft light, then grow dimmer as it approaches a quiet room. A museum might use brighter lighting in public areas, then lower levels in galleries meant for contemplation. These transitions act like chapters in a story. Each space has its own tone, and the path between them builds anticipation. Without these moments of change, a building can feel flat, like a single note held too long. Narrative journeys depend on controlled illumination. Designers think about what to reveal and what to conceal at each stage. In a theater, the lobby glows warmly, filled with activity. As people enter the performance hall, the lights fade, focusing attention on the stage. The darkness is not just absence, it is part of the performance. The same approach works in museums, religious spaces, or even homes. A kitchen may be bright for work, while a nearby living room remains dim and calm. Moving between these spaces creates rhythm. The journey is not only physical, but emotional. Team Lab's digital exhibitions explore this balance on an immersive scale. These installations use projected light in completely dark rooms. Visitors move through spaces where walls, floors, and ceilings come alive with color and motion. The darkness is absolute until the images appear. This contrast heightens the impact of the visuals. Because the light is dynamic, constantly shifting, the experience feels alive. The darkness allows the light to appear almost weightless, as if it floats in space. These exhibitions show how technology can create environments that feel both futuristic and deeply connected to human perception. Darkness also plays a role in sustainability. Many buildings are overlit, wasting energy and flattening experience. By embracing shadow, designers can reduce the need for constant artificial light. Instead of lighting entire rooms evenly, they focus illumination where it is needed most. Task areas like desks or counters receive direct light, while surrounding areas remain dim. This approach saves power and creates visual interest. It also connects people to natural rhythms. As daylight fades, interiors shift gradually rather than snapping from bright to dark. The change feels organic, like the transition from afternoon to evening outdoors. Smart lighting systems expand these possibilities. Sensors can adjust brightness based on time of day, occupancy, or weather conditions. A space might glow softly in the morning, brighten during peak activity, then dim again at night. This dynamic control mimics the natural world. It reduces energy use while supporting mood and function. In public buildings, smart systems can respond to movement, lighting only the areas being used. Darkness becomes part of the design rather than a failure of maintenance. It is active and intentional, changing as people move through the space. Consider a museum pathway designed to move visitors from active public areas to quiet reflection. The entrance hall is bright and open, filled with natural light. As visitors walk deeper inside, the lighting lowers, shadows lengthen, and walls seem to close in slightly. The noise of the outside world fades. By the time they reach the final gallery, the space is dim and focused. Only the artwork is lit, floating against a background of shadow. This journey is carefully planned. Each step prepares the visitor for the next, guiding their emotions as well as their movements. The balance between light and darkness creates a story that unfolds through architecture. The same principle can be seen on a city scale. A lively square might glow with warm, even lighting, drawing people to gather and interact. Nearby streets may be darker, with pools of light at intersections. Moving from one area to the other feels like a transition between chapters. The darkness makes the lit areas feel more vibrant. Without contrast, the city would appear flat and monotonous. By designing these layers, planners shape the nighttime experience just as much as they shape the daytime one. Balance is not only visual, it affects the senses in other ways. In a dim space, sound carries differently. The hush of a darkened gallery feels deeper than the quiet of a bright room. Touch becomes more important too. A textured wall or warm wooden floor stands out when vision is limited. By considering these senses, designers create spaces that feel whole. Light and darkness are part of a larger system of perception. Future technologies will allow even more precise control. Buildings may one day respond instantly to changes in weather, season, or human activity. A window could darken automatically when the sun is strong, then clear as clouds pass. Interior lighting might adjust to match natural cycles, supporting health and well-being. In these scenarios, darkness is not static. It shifts like a living element, shaping and being shaped by the environment. The goal remains the same: harmony between what is seen and what is hidden. Even in simple settings, this harmony matters. A home with layered lighting can create different moods throughout the day. Morning light might spill across a breakfast table, while evening brings soft shadows to a reading corner. A single lamp can turn a dark room into a refuge. These small moments reflect the larger principles of architecture. Balance is not only from monumental buildings or complex installations. It begins with how each space responds to the rhythm of light and dark. Achieving this balance requires restraint. It is tempting to add more light, to reveal every surface and corner. But too much light erases contrast. Darkness must be given space to exist. This does not mean neglect. It means careful planning. A well-placed shadow can be as powerful as any fixture. The challenge is to know when to stop, when to let mystery remain. Architecture at its best does not simply solve problems. It creates experiences. Light and darkness, working together, turn walls and floors into places that speak to the senses and the spirit. When these elements are in harmony, a building feels complete. The brightness of day flows naturally into the softness of night. Movement through spaces becomes a journey, with moments of clarity and moments of pause. Whether through advanced technology or simple materials, the principle is the same. Light defines form, while darkness gives it depth. Together, they shape not only what is seen, but how it is felt. This balance is the quiet foundation beneath every meaningful space.